Welcome to episode 14 of Everse Chat. This episode is brought to you by my MacBook Pro internal camera.
Everse Chat.
Hey everyone, it's Kel, and this is a the first video recorded session of EVC. I sound so old saying video recorded. Wow. Anyway, so this is just the kickoff of our Greek tragedy series. So, how this will go, not sure if each segment will be recorded. Don't want to promise that just in case, but they are a video. They are intended to be a video series. Why? Just because it's something different and I thought it would be cool. No other real reason. So, for this first segment, this is part one. We are going to be talking about holding on too tight. So I gave this each title a theme around Greek tragedy, and just so you guys know, this is my little office area, my painting that's really cool. The microphone I mentioned in episode 12. And if you hear anything weird, that's probably my dogs. So they snore, they bark, they do things that dogs do. I'll try and cut it out, but sometimes they might jump up on my lap. Just ignore it, comment, whatever. They're all easygoing. I'm easygoing. And after all, this is about learning. Anyway, so what does the dog matter? All right, so back on track. So part one. This is called Stranglehold and Hamartia. So if you are familiar with Greek tragedy at all, then you will know that Hamartia means tragic flaw. The one thing that happened to the main character or a character or that is intrinsic to them that causes their downfall. And this is a very appropriate theme when we're talking about business ownership. Why? Because we're not perfect beings. There are things that happen that we cannot control. Well, I shouldn't say that we cannot control, that we are not aware of within ourselves that cause us to do and say or act in a way that is counterproductive or not beneficial to our business purposes. So, question one is this. What does it look like? What does it look like to strangle your business? What am I saying when I say you have a stranglehold on your business or you're holding on too tight? Let me just pull out an example from my little bag over here of stuff. A shipping company. So John owns a shipping company, and he started this by himself, shipping cars. I like cars. Now he can continue to drive his own truck and pick up a finite amount of cars every single time. He can pick up 6 cars. Or he can take a step back and become the owner, like he is, of that company and hire a driver and let them drive and work on, or perhaps drive at the same time. Now he has 2 cars. and so on. So you follow that through to its conclusion, and all of a sudden, he no longer has to drive his truck. He has drivers driving his truck for him, and the business has a chance to flourish, and he can diversify. Why can he diversify? Because it is no longer solely dependent on him. So, what happens if John has this stranglehold on his business? Well, John would then say, well, you know what? He would say something like this. While I know I should hire someone else, I don't know if they're going to drive the truck in a way that's efficient. What if my fuel costs go through the roof? What if the driver has a terrible background and I miss something on the background check and they end up stealing a car that I'm shipping? What if I don't know, what if they get in an accident? How am I going to get my company out of this? These are all things that can ruin my company. These are things that can cause all of this work that I've put into it to be for naught. Okay, John, legitimate point. What if all these things happen? What if the sky falls down? Yes, your business would fail. But is what if enough to keep you stagnant, to keep you from progressing? That's when you can start to weed out if you're having a stranglehold on your business. If your line of logic, it concludes in such a way that you are the only possible solution for your business's problems, then chances are you're holding on a little too tight. And there are ways that we can work to let go of that grip. That grip, so is often based in fear of the unknown. So in this scenario, you see that John was overly concerned with what if. What if this? What if X, Y, Z, this, that, and so on. It was not based in logistics. It was not based mathematically. It was not based in anything other than I am afraid that these things will happen. Therefore, I will prevent them from happening by limiting the mobility of my company, by keeping it all under my purview. So again, that is the stranglehold that sometimes we put on our own businesses that only harms us. John could make a lot more money. He could probably have a lot better quality of life, more family time, and so on. If he were to start hiring somebody if he would start using the fruits of his labor to hire somebody else to continue the work for him. So, stranglehold. Moving on to the second part of what this theme is, tragic flaw, the fatal or tragic flaw, hamartia, whatever you want to call it. That gets a little bit more nuanced because that is really starting to deal with personality, motives, and so on. So the easiest way, I'm sure we all understand what our own individual flaws are. For example, I can be very quick to respond before I think about what I am saying. In my particular line of work, that can be a tragic flaw. I have seen it be a tragic flaw. Think about this. I work in pharmacy. I work in healthcare. Yes, I am not on the front lines. No, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But there is risk abound. There's risk everywhere. If I were to just go off the cuff and say something to somebody, they could, because they know my position in my company or in a company that I'm associated with, they could choose to take it a certain way. They could choose to say, "Oh, what Cal said is law. What? Yes, since he said it, sure." And that could blow back on me. Why? Because I chose to speak before I thought. For other people, it's just the opposite. They don't speak after they think, and they just end up being silent, and then things just kind of go to wherever they go when things are silent. They just ghost people left and right. So tragic flaws are abound, and they are always contextually bound. That is something that is very important to understand, that tragic flaws only exist in a context. This is not about picking apart your personality and having to go through some long drawn out metamorphosis. Who am I? What am I about? Yes, there is some soul searching. Yes, you should be self-aware as an entrepreneur. But that does not mean that you all of a sudden have to reinvent the wheel. You have to reinvent yourself every single time you find a flaw. It is more about understanding how it works within that context and coming up with strategies to overcome the harmful effects of your tragic flaws. To come back to that example of myself. All right. So I tend to respond quickly when sometimes I need to think it out a little bit more. So what do? I make a habit of not trying to check my email every 2 seconds, because I know if I check my email, I'm going to see something that will eventually piss me off that I want to respond to, like that. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting here digging myself out of a hole, when instead I should have talked to my team, said, hey, did you also get this email? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Okay, here's what I'm thinking of responding. A lot of times what I get is, okay, well, that's good, but did you think for a second, if you say this, that you might get this response, and you might perpetuate the thing that you're trying to stop? And that for me is my tactic of saying, all right, slow down, stop what you're doing, think about it. All right, rely on people that don't have that tragic flaw, that are there for you, and then reevaluate, then respond. So again, it's all about coming up with tactics, coming up with things that you need to supplement your deficiencies. So again, why I wanted this to be the Greek tragedy series is because we can learn a lot from literature. So I want you to take a second and realize, or just take an introspective second and think, where's my tragic flaw? Some really good examples from literature. Hubris, pride. Do we bite off more than we can chew? Do we say we can take this challenge when we really can't? Or what are we doing? Are we being too prideful or too boisterous? Do we misplace trust? Misplaced trust is a very common theme in literature, where this character is just kind of happy-go-lucky. Hey, I'm going to trust you with this. I'm going to trust you because you sound like you know what you're doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that because sounds good. Might as well do it. And then we end up, in a spot where we shouldn't be. Excessive curiosity. Do we sometimes poke the bear a little bit more than we're supposed to, just to see what will happen? I think in business, this one is very common, especially for entrepreneurs. We are naturally curious beings. We want to know what happens. We want to know what's on the other side. We're not just okay with the status quo. We don't just settle for because I said so, because this is the way it is, because that's the law. We tend to ask why. Why is that the law? Why is that the way this is? What can be done about that? What about in this case? What about in that case? What if this happens? And then before we know it, we're in some sort of trouble because there's one too many. What if? Oh, well, how do you really know? Again, pride. That is a really big one in business as well. Separate from hubris. Yes, I did say that before. Correct me, whatever. Pride is separate from hubris. And that pride, sometimes we can be very prideful in our positions. I see this a lot on LinkedIn. Oh my gosh. I stay away from LinkedIn because it's just it gets a little crazy sometimes. Tends to be so full of themselves and, oh, I am the authority. What is the word? I'm the subject matter expert. Everybody's a subject matter expert on LinkedIn. I do not know how. It's like everybody, once they get their LinkedIn page, they become a PhD in talking out the side of their neck. Um, that's my own personal opinion, but sometimes that can come back to bite you in the butt if you're sitting here writing these articles on LinkedIn because you want everybody to respect you, and you're like, oh, well, I'm the CEO of John Doe's cotton mitten company, and cotton mittens are only supposed to work this way because, and trust me, because I know, because I'm John of John's Doe's mitten company. And then someone comes back and says, well, mittens should be made of wool. You look kind of stupid. So, pride can be a very big one. Lack of self-control, that is another big one. I would attribute my personal tragic flaw more to lack of self-control. Sometimes I really feel like people say stupid stuff and they just need to be told that what they said is completely stupid. As much as I want to say that, you can't always say that. And, it's really been an exercise in self-control to try and bring that to my team instead of bring that to the person that just said something completely asinine. So there are so many different ways to examine how you may be displaying a tragic flaw. And it is completely worthwhile, in my opinion, to just take a second and just think about it. Everything's going to be there. If you just take a second, your clients will still be there. They might be just as annoying, but at least you will have your own introspection, your own self-evaluation to rely on when things get really tough. And you can rest assured that it wasn't through some stupid mistake of your own that something happened. This is not saying, well, if you take a moment to be introspective, to be self-aware, that nothing will ever happen. This is just saying, eliminate one variable, a huge variable, which is yourself, by just getting a chance to know yourself. And that's worth its weight in gold. All right, so we talked about all of this, this theory of, when are you strangling your business? What are your fatal flaws or tragic flaws? But why is any of this important? Why is it, yeah, we all are flawed, whatever, life goes on, right? Okay. So let's consider this concept called the founder's effect. So this is a concept borrowed from genetics that was taken by organizational scientists and then turned into another definition, specifically dealing with organizational science, that is coincidentally the same definition as it is in genetics. Now, the founder's effect goes a little something like this. Whenever you have a small population that is founded by a small or a homogeneous sample size of instances of a organism or a personality, what have you, there's a greater chance that as that group grows, it will resemble its founder due to a lack of diversity. Now, that was a very messy definition. So if I can, I will put the actual definition on the screen. If I can't, I will just reword it. So the founder's effect is why you see that, these companies that start up tend to hire the same people, the like me bias. So founder's effect has a whole bunch of other stuff packed into it. But that's kind of outside of where we're going today, at least in this. But suffice to know that the founder's effect is why we need to be hyper vigilant about what we are bringing into our companies. We need to curate our personalities to our companies because everybody's watching. And when I say that, it is not some spooky, oh, everybody's watching. It is literally everybody's watching, because everybody could mean two people. It could mean five people. And those people will tend to, if they like your company, if they agree with it, if they mesh with your company, they will tend to adopt those rules of behavior. That is something called mimetic pressure. So normative and mimetic pressure, they are miming. That is literally what mimetic pressure is. They're miming a behavior, and it is driven by normative pressure in a way. But yes, normative pressure and mimetic pressure are why people, when there's no other reason to stick with a startup, tend to stay, because they, one, tend to already agree with what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're acting, how you treat other people. And they tend to propagate those things. So if, for example, you are a person that swears, this is it. This is the easy one. If you swear and you go into your meetings and you're like, F this, F that, blah, 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 this person is whatever, you can bet your bottom dollar that the people that don't like that, they probably won't stick around. The people that do like that, or agree, or at least are indifferent, will probably then adapt and adopt to that behavior. And they will start doing the same thing. Before you know it, you have a whole bunch of yous walking around, you cussing at each other and carrying on. And it is completely normal in that context. It is completely acceptable to do that in that context. Now, that could be good or bad. If you have some edgy company, like a game development or something like that, then hey, that might be great. Now, if you are a doctor's office, that may not be the best thing, to go up to a patient and be like, hey, screw you, you have cancer. Probably not the best thing. So, again, going back to what I originally said, it is heavily contextually bound. That not everything that is a flaw is always a flaw. So we have the founder's effect. This effect carries on and propagates and grows in our organizations, in our companies, in an uncontrollable manner. Meaning that is not something that we can easily and directly control. Yes, we can institute policy. We can say, okay, maybe this swearing thing has gotten a little out of hand. I know I do it, but maybe that's not the best moving forward. Now we need to correct that. So we're going to institute all this. That is very hard to do. You're going to have to instigate another change process, which has, in my opinion and in my experience, about a 50 to 60% chance of success in the first place. So it is much easier to control it when it's just you. Yes, it is still hard because you are changing behaviors, but changing the behavior of one person who happens to be yourself is a lot easier than changing even the behavior of one other person that is not you. So what do we do? What do we do with this founder's effect? Now we know what it is. We know how it spreads, and we know the dynamics of it. This can be a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of what I'm talking about can be both good and bad depending on what it is. So it is our responsibility as entrepreneurs, as business owners, and as business leaders to then identify what is good and what is bad. We want the good to spread. We want the bad to not spread. We want things to grow. So, for example, if you are a very, very measured speaker and you found a company, you can expect to a certain degree people like that to gravitate towards you, to have a collection of other measured speakers. Now, if you are in conflict resolution. That might be a very great thing. You don't want to say, oh, well, that's my tragic flaw because such and such always makes fun of me because I really think before I say something. No, you want that to grow and you encourage that. But if you are in conflict resolution and you find yourself in all sorts of drama every 2 seconds because Bobby said something to Tommy and Tommy likes Becky who doesn't like Michelle, and so whatever, so all of a sudden you've got to jump into it, then yeah, you should probably figure out something else to do there, because you can't let that grow. You can't let that drama grow if it's harmful to your business purpose. It makes no sense to be in that line of business if you are only growing clones of yourself that harm your business. So let me check my handy dandy notepad here for our next kind of tangent. And there we go. That was an email that you just heard. So it's probably something crazy that I'm not going to check just now because I will want to respond to it right now. Instead, I'm just going to keep going on with this podcast. So we talked about this in episode 11, I believe, with Wayne. So your flaw or your perceived flaw can also be your superpower. Like I was just talking about with speaking. Be very aware of that. What is something that can be your secret superpower? And when you are growing your business, look for others in your circle that may have a very useful superpower. Obviously, I stay up to date on that sort of thing, but say you have somebody that can really just get to the meat of an issue. Why wouldn't you bring that person in, bring that person closer, and start developing that? You know, there's always an opportunity to propagate a founder's effect in a small company. You can feature different parts of your company. Founder's effect does not mean it's just you and you are the only one that can affect anything. Now, if it is literally just you, then yes, of course. But for example, if you start a company with a friend, there's 2 of you. If you guys hire somebody on, there's 3 of you. That's three possibilities for variation. So being the head honcho, you need to be aware of that and be able to adapt and feature different parts with the knowledge that that is probably going to grow as you get more and more people. And as you're adapting, you also need to be aware of how you go about controlling and otherwise, steering your organization in whichever way you want to steer it. A very, very tragic flaw that I see a lot with business owners, particularly new business owners or people getting into something new, is this tendency to mistake randomness or coincidence for a pattern and act on that pattern. We in our consulting side, this is something that we are constantly warning our clients against, is do not think that this is, because this happened in this little container here, that it means that this is going to happen everywhere. And without fail, they always freak out and, just kind of go off the handle and think that, okay, well, the little tiny sky in this pocket fell, so the whole sky is falling and everything is doomed and I have no escape. So in that way, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs will fall victim to self-fulfilling prophecy of thinking that because this happened or because this happened, that is that there's no escape, or because I think this happened, that there's no escape. And really, they're creating that reality. They're manifesting that reality because they are so convinced that that is true. So, when we are talking about these Greek tragic events, I personally feel that a lot of it comes from this concept of self-fulfilling prophecy, of mistaking randomness for a pattern and acting on that. And when I sit down and debrief with these people after everything's said and done, I always get the same response without fail. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know to think about this. I didn't know to consider for a second that this is just temporary. When you're in it, it's really hard. It is really hard to realize and get some perspective that this is just temporary. This is just work. This is just this little pocket of my life here. And because I experienced this here, does not mean anything anywhere else with any sort of reliability. And they have this moment where they're just like, okay, well, if I choose to get back on the saddle, now I know. Now I know not to overreact. And I would just encourage everybody listening to this to realize that you can have that moment now while things are good, perhaps for you, or you can be like everybody else that I tell. You need to take a moment and think, and they never really listen, and have that after things fall apart. I would rather you do it while you still have something to work for, while you're still excited. But ultimately, that's an individual choice. Some people just need to hit that wall before they believe it's there. Others will, listen, and it really just takes a second. It just takes 1 second, but it is something incredibly hard. I know, for one, I did not listen, and I had to hit that wall. So I can't knock people too hard for not also just doing whatever I say. But introspection, self-awareness has some really deep value for what we are doing, for the journey that you take yourself and others on in entrepreneurship. Okay, well, that wraps up part 1 of the Greek tragedy series. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know what you think of the video portion of it. I'm just trying out some new stuff. I don't know the first thing about video editing. I can work my way around it, so we'll see how this all turns out. But if it's more engaging, leave a like, leave comments, what have you. Of course, this will probably only be on YouTube and Facebook to view, just because of everything else that do is a audio only media. So just leave some feedback. Let me know. Do you want to see more videos? Am I too ugly? If it's anything like my wife, if you don't like my shirt. But yeah, leave a comment, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.